You ever feel like you might have been slightly taken advantage of by yourself? I just got back from spending like $120 at Barnes& and Noble, and I needed to justify it by making it a tax write-off. So I'm going to do this video that I've been having this on my mind for a while now, that I think light novels and manga have been getting overpriced in the US. And I don't just mean that as someone who's buying them, but also like the spirit of the thing. And I'll get into what I mean momentarily, but I think I want to break down sort of the history of light novels being published in the US. And manga as well, because manga is a big part of this, but manga's trend is kind of all over the place, whereas light novels are going in a very clear direction. Now, keep in mind, I am not an industry insider. I have no experience working in the business. I've, only read cursory accounts of some of the things that goes on. I'm just speaking from experience as someone who's been buying light novels for as long as they've been coming out here in the U.S., and who's just been observing the trends. So in the early days of manga getting released in the US, particularly throughout the 90s, it was kind of chaotic. You had a few companies like Viz, Dark Horse, and some others who were all kind of publishing things in their own way, in whatever way made sense to them. Back in the 90s, there was a Ranma publication, for instance, which had individual issues, like they would release each chapter on its own for like $3 to $5 in comic stores. Then they had the collected volumes, which actually had all been flipped. They read from left to right, like you would an American publication, which a lot of stuff was back in the 90s and early 2000s, because manga just hadn't caught on as a big trend. Actually, even this collected volume is read left to right, and this is like a second printing. This was like from the early 2000s, I think. It was definitely not the initial printing of Ranma. So, for a long time, things were being released that way, and prices were just kind of all over the place. This is only $10 for a pretty big volume, volume 1, which throughout the 2000s, Viz would largely publish stuff like this, would be about $10, and then they started up their Shonen Jump series. And they had the Shonen Jump magazines, which would come out once a month and publish all the big shonen titles like your Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, etc. And those, the individual collected volumes of those were even cheaper. They were only $8 because they wanted like younger kids and stuff to be able to afford them. So this was like the cheapest you could get, were the Shonen Jump volumes. Not necessarily the best paper quality. It's sort of a yellowish, but it was a quick, easy way to buy a whole lot of manga if you were a kid and you wanted to collect those series. But then you had companies like Dark Horse, where they were releasing Berserk and Hellsing for like $15, $16 a pop per volume, which they could get away with because it was for adult audiences. They were adults-only manga, and that was who they were expecting to splurge the cash on it. So when it comes to publishing, there seems to be, like, everything seems to be based on who the audience is and how much marketing there is. Because there's basically two ways to make something sell. Either you market the fuck out of it, and you can sell it for relatively cheap because a lot of people are going to buy it, or if it's a really niche product, since I know you're going to complain about that. If it's a niche product, you ramp up the price and you make it look fancier so that people will want to spend more money on it. And that sort of dichotomy becomes really prominent in the modern times. See, in the mid-2000s, manga exploded, and you had Tokyopop releasing everything they could get their hands on for $10 a piece. You had Viz doing a lot. You had Del Rey, who were usually, like, sometimes were like $1 more, because I think they're Canadian or something. There was some reason they had to charge more for some tax reason. But Del Rey started putting stuff out. You had Yen Press came a little bit later, and Yen Press would release stuff that was really niche for a few dollars more. And they were doing a lot of these, not that, that's Shadow Star. That's from the 90s. Yen Press was doing a lot of these, where they would release a 4-koma manga in a really tall volume to compare. Here's like a normal size manga or light novel. So they'd have these really tall issues for their 4-komas, and they'd release them for $10.99. So it's just $1 more, but a lot of them are shorter than a normal manga volume, like in terms of length. It's just that they're taller. And they kind of had this impression like, if you bought this, you were the only guy reading it. Because, 4 comas and cute girl stuff was not the most popular genres of manga. So it was really just guys like me who were buying that shit. And over time, the ways that these things were released evolved and kept evolving. There was a huge economic collapse in the late 2000s, which crippled anime and manga. Manga was hit by the fact that there was just too much of it. Tokyopop described it as they cannibalized themselves. They released so many different things that their main competition was themselves, and so they just had to completely scale back and cancel everything, essentially. Meanwhile, companies like Viz started putting out tons of omnibus volumes. All of these became collections of 3 volumes in one book for $15. Or if it was more of a signature series, you might get something like Cardcaptor Sakura, where it's like, I don't know if this is 2 or 3 volumes. It just says book 1, but it's $20. So you get these giant ones. And these start becoming really popular in the early 2010s, late 2000s. You start getting lots of these omnibuses. And essentially, manga has now been on the comeback for whatever reason. There's more of it getting published, more of it getting popular. Lots of all the big name anime series, their manga versions are now coming out here and stuff. So it really feels like the people releasing manga have a better feel on the pulse of what's going to be popular and what they should release. And as a result, there's been way more manga coming out. But it's also been coming out more expensive. Where now we've got 7 Seas over here releasing Pandora and the Crimson Shell for $13. Yen Press manga are all $13 now for School Live, And this is now the normal going price, 10 to 13 or 11 or something. All of them are above 10 now. And what's unsettling about this to me, for both manga and light novels, is that in Japan these things are cheap. The reason manga and light novels have such a bigger audience than anime does in Japan is that they're kind of for everyone. They're stuff that you can easily pick up. They're not printed necessarily as nicely as some of these are. I don't know, maybe they are, but you're meant to be able to go up to a stand of a bunch of manga and just buy a few as they come out every so many months. And it feels weird to me to have them cost more than a normal book or more than a normal comic book when you're getting a lot less material usually. Manga reads very fast. It's often sparse. There's no color. It's all black and white. It shouldn't be costing as much to print as a graphic novel of an American comic, but it costs the same amount. I paid the same for this as I did for wherever the fuck Batwoman is, somewhere around here. Which is a little weird to me. And where this becomes particularly weird is with light novels. So, light novels started coming out in the US in the mid-2000s. You had 7 Seas, who were particularly ambitious. They brought over Boogie Pop first. And it was, it's supposed to be this was the big influential light novel, so this is the one we're going to kick off with. They were $10 a volume. I was a huge fan. I don't think many people bought them. They only released the first 3 volumes, and then volume 5, which was a backstory volume, which they did in this weird, tiny $8 book for reasons I don't understand. But they tried to release a bunch of light novels, but it just never really caught on, and they kind of just stopped doing it. Then you had Tokyopop, who kind of went the same route. Tokyopop was publishing their light novels in these, sort of cheap, pulpy volumes. They're $10 a piece, just like before. They had stuff like Gosick, Calling You, Kino's Journey, and Welcome to the NHK here, which NHK was only a 1-volume story, but all of these did not continue. This was only $8, the NHK volume. But all these light novel series that were supposed to be, I don't know if Calling You is a multiple series, but Gosick and Kino's Journey did not continue. They only got 1 volume released. Light novels just didn't seem to be catching on. And that wasn't too surprising because they weren't really marketing them well. They were picking stuff that, Gosick didn't have an anime adaptation at the time. Kino's Journey's anime wasn't that popular at the time. They weren't marketing them at all. No one knew about this shit. I would just walk into a Barnes & Noble and happen to see a light novel, and I'd go, oh, cool. And I knew what they were, so I was, like, excited about it. But I don't think most people were paying any attention to this stuff. You had Del Rey come along. They got ambitious, too. They were releasing Zaregoto from Nisio before the Monogatari anime existed. So Nisio name had no weight at all. And the funny thing about Del Rey is that they would really like hype up these authors for how popular they are in Japan. They'd be like, Nisio is the hottest upcoming young superstar in Japan and everyone loves his stuff. But for me, I'm like, who the fuck is that? I never heard of him. You know, I knew about him because of they also released these collected things called Faust, which is an incredibly ambitious 2 volumes that they made, where it was adapting short stories and manga from, or translating rather, from a magazine called Faust that was out in Japan, which was mostly these sorts of authors like Nisio and Kadono Kohei, who did Boogie Pop, the Welcome to the NHK author, Tatsuhiko Takimoto. Like, they would publish all these like really weird authors, and they brought 2 volumes of Faust to the US, and again they were really hyping up how important all these authors are, how cool they are. These were $17 volumes, but well worth the price because there's so much shit that you're getting out of it. Lots of bonus content, manga pages and shit, some full color pages, really great releases. But no one knew what this was. No one knew why this was exciting, except for me. I honestly felt for the longest time like I was the only one who'd ever read these. I very rarely see anybody talk about them, and even when I do, usually they know them they bought them for Nisio because he later became popular because of the Monogatari anime getting so popular. But like, you know, this predates that, so there was no hope for it back in the day. So eventually, light novels just weren't getting published anymore. Del Rey quit, Tokyopop quit, 7 Seas pretty much quit. I think they might still be doing stuff now. They got some success with the Strawberry Panic light novels because Yuri, and then they went really hard on like selling Yuri stuff for a long time. But like, then we had stuff that just came out of nowhere. Like Blood the Last Vampire has a light novel written by Mamoru Oshii. It's very weird. $9 by DH Press, who I guess that's Dark Horse. I think it might be a Dark Horse book division or something. Just released out of nowhere because it's tied to Blood the Last Vampire. There were some light novels that were like tie-ins and stuff to like Death Note or XXX Holic or Full Metal Alchemist, which got released here, which are kind of their own thing because they were already successful series before those novels even existed. But there was kind of like this massive rebranding effort in the 2010s. I want to say it started with Haikasoru, which is a Viz imprint that showed up. And Viz started doing these signature series. They had the Viz signature volumes of manga, which were like $16, and they really dolled them up to look like something special. Bokurano came out that way. I think Barakamon might be on that imprint or something. I've never bought one of them because they're like way crazy overpriced for it's just manga. It's just manga like any other manga. They just decided that these ones are the ones they're gonna like doll up and make look like they're something special. And Haikasoru is kind of the same, where Haikasoru is a sci-fi novel imprint, and they're very, like, when they started, they were like very adamant that these were not light novels. These were sci-fi novels, and a lot of them are. You know, the Lord of the Sands of Time here, but like most of them are pretty short, and some of them are light novels. All You Need Is Kill was a light novel, in spite of what they tried to claim. But they released it for $14, and they are very adamant about getting their stuff to not be in the manga section. You always find it in the sci-fi novel section. They started putting out Legend of the Galactic Heroes recently, which is a bit thicker, but they're charging like $20 for it. And I have to stop and look at it and be like, do I want to pay $20 for one volume? Because here's the thing. All You Need Is Kill is one book. That's fine. But then we get into this stuff. Oh, and here's like this is actually a great release. Marduk Scramble was released on Haikasoru. All 3 books in one $18 volume. That's pretty good. Good deal. But then light novels started coming back. And I really think Yen Press was leading the charge. Haruhi was their first big one. And those volumes costed, I think, 11, 12, 13, something around there, something around that amount. And at first it was like, cool. Light novels are a niche product. They might cost a little more because only so many people want them. They were releasing Haruhi in hardcover and shit like that. They started putting out Spice and Wolf. Spice and Wolf was a really funny case because they couldn't decide how they wanted to market it. So they had taken they had put covers on each volume, which were these like live action photographs of like a sexy wolf chick. They looked terrible. And they were trying to make those the main cover, and people rejected it really hard. So what they did was they put the anime covers like over top of this. I wasn't sure if it was originally a slipcover or not, but here's like the one that they tried to use, and then it's like, oh, you have a removable anime version. Because I don't know, I guess they thought they were gonna try to market it outside of the niche of anime fans, but I think it became apparent that anime fans wanted this more than that, because they've released all of them. Like, every Spice and Wolf volume has been released here, but even these were only $11. It's really in this modern era where now most of the big anime coming out are light novel adaptations, and so they've started releasing all those light novels. Sword Art Online, there's a fuckload of those books out now. They release the original series, they release progressive, they divide them into arcs, and they're all $13, $14. But the thing about these modern light novels is they're not the same as the old ones. It's not like Boogie Pop, where each book felt complete and it was like a full story, or book 1 of Zaregoto was a complete... This is not book 1. Book 1 of Zaregoto was a complete story. It has a beginning, middle, and end, and it resolves all of its conflicts. The next book is just kind of like a sequel. And that was how light novels kind of were in the early 2000s, but it's not like that anymore. Now they're really serial novels. You've got Log Horizon, and it was reading this that it really hit me like, this is a $14 book. And you can read it in like 2 hours. The text size is quite large. It's probably like 40,000 words. And the writing is nothing to write home about, which is true of most light novels. I mean, the reason that they are light novels is that they're fucking cranked out. This is stuff that, I should have put Index on here because I got the first volume of Index, but it's in the bathroom. But like, there's like 3 or 4 Index novels a year. Every year. The writer cranks them out. And when you read through the first volume of Log Horizon, yeah, it's good. It is a good story, but it's chapter 1. This is not a complete story. It really is like watching the first 4 episodes of an ongoing anime series, or reading the first volume of a manga. And at $14, I could buy a classic piece of literature. I could buy a complete book, I've got a whole shelf of them over there, It's odd to me to be selling these sort of cheap pulp novels. And, there's pictures in here, but it's mostly text. The pictures aren't in color. They haven't done anything to make these, like, special. There's, like, it looks like this one has a little fold-out poster. But, like, there's not a ton of extra content being loaded into these. They're not really making them like these high-class consumer products. And I think there's a good reason that Yen Press light novels are mostly stuff that already has popular anime adaptations. We're not getting the new light novels that are coming out in Japan. We're not getting the stuff that's new and fresh and hitting the waves now. We're getting old shit. Like Log Horizon's like one of the newer ones that's coming out just because it got an anime adaptation rather quick. But stuff like Index or Durarara, which have, been coming out since the late 2000s or early 2000s in Index's case, it's like I'm paying $14 for a snapshot of history. And just because, like, I want the continued story because I know that the anime will never continue, so I need the novels in order to finish the story, not so much in Durarara's case. But that's definitely the case with the one that inspired me to finally do this, which is Bakano. I've been waiting a very long time for Bakano, the light novels, to come here. They were supposed to come out a long time ago. I believe, I'm holding this upside down, I believe Seven Seas were supposed to release it at one point, or they were supposed to release something else from the same author, but they never did. Bakano had a 13-episode anime and a 3-episode OVA that came out in 2007. The show didn't really have much success when it came out, but it later became popular in the US, and people have been dying for a second season, and we might never get one. It's been 9 years. There's like 30 of these fucking light novels. This is a long, ongoing series. And I do think that the first volume of this is more of a complete story. This is from 2003. It's more of the old style of light novel. But here's the thing. They released this thing hardback only for $20. $20 for a hardback of a light novel. Look at the cover of this thing. They put like one of these glossy slip covers on there. It's just kind of cheap and shitty. It's just over a brown book. You know, they didn't even tape it on here. It's just it's like they're dressing it up as a super high quality release, and they know people will buy it because people have been so fucking desperate for Baccano for 9 fucking years. Because the anime will never finish. People have been dying for the light novels. So of course they could ramp the price up as high as they want and people were gonna buy it. Not because it's really a product that's worth $20, but because the demand for it was so high. And I guess that's good business, but I honestly, when I looked and saw $20, the only way I was able to justify buying this was knowing I could write it off on my taxes by doing this video. So, like, I really had to stand there and be like, there's no way. Because if they release all of Baccano, then I'll eventually have spent like $600 if there's not 30 volumes. There's like 20 something though. So I will eventually have spent well over $500 on fucking light novels. You know, of one series. Light novels, which are pulpy teen entertainment. They're written for the age range of like 16 to 23. You know, like they're not really like something like Baccano for me. It's like I have so much nostalgia with it, and it's so like, you know, I've been waiting for it for so long that I kind of had to have it. But like for a new audience, for a teenagers who this is like written for, this would most appeal to, $20 is a bit ridiculous. And so what I really think they're doing, what I think the problem is with all of this, we've got you know, Kizumonogatari here was $15. It's a bit thicker of a book, but it's vertical, and you know, vertical are great at making everything they release look fancy, better than Yen Press is with this. This looks tacky. The cover is not even good. The slipcover feels like shit. It's a terrible release. Kizumonogatari at least looks fancy. Vertical are good for that. They've been releasing the fucking Gundam The Origin graphic novels for $30 a pop hardcover. And all it is them telling you that this series is worth more. Like, there's nothing about Kizumonogatari specifically that makes it worth more money than the first volume of Spice and Wolf. They were just released at different times with different, you know, market goals in mind, and they made this one look fancy. I don't think it's necessarily a book that should cost $15, even though this one is a little bit thicker. But like, it feels to me like it's defeating the spirit of what these stories are. These stories are disposable. They're quick, easy, fun entertainment. They're books that come out 3 times a year, and there's 30 volumes total, you know, of Index especially. Like, I'm reading the first volume of Index, and I'm like, this is clearly something you're meant to pick up, read through in a day, and then 3 months later, you get the next volume, and it's a continuing story. It's like watching a TV show, flipping on the TV. I mean, nobody would let HBO charge them $15 per episode of their favorite show. It's just a little bit ridiculous, and I think they're getting away with it by just releasing stuff that already has popular anime adaptations, that there's already demand for, that people already know they want, which is fine, and I know that's crowd-pleasing, and I know that's what most fans want, but for me it would be so much more satisfying if we were getting new, cutting-edge light novels released here, you know? And every time they license one of these, there's usually been fan translations going on for years, and I don't read those because I don't like the writing style of most of them. Most of those people don't know how to write that well. But like, you know, there's people who will have been reading Log Horizon who already have read all of it and were waiting for the fans to adapt the next one, and now instead it's being released in $14 books, you know. I just feel like I want that one. What's the one? If you go on My Anime List and go to top manga. Number 2 on the list will be a light novel series. I don't remember the name of it, but it's very popular. It's gotten, fan translations. People love it. And I'm looking at that like, why isn't that coming out here? It doesn't have an anime adaptation yet, but it's cutting edge. It's new. People are into it. I want it while it's hot, not these 2007 manga that I'm buying because I'm fucking nostalgic for Bakano. Yeah, that's my point. This is out of hand, and I keep buying them because I'm stupid. But I would like to see I would like to see some change in the way this is going. Peace. The worst part is that I haven't read like any of these.